my last chat with Charlie was on his radio show the Monday before he died. He ended the segment 5 minutes earlier than usual. Normally I get about a half an hour with him, but he cut me off 5 minutes earlier, which I thought, well, I guess I didn't bring the heat today. I don't know, like maybe it wasn't my best day. We would speak about once a week on his show, which was an honor. And he actually wanted to just go on a rant. He wanted to opine. He wanted to opine specifically on that young liberal women would be happier if they got married and had children. So this wasn't some sort of grandiose political statement. He wasn't talking about some bill that's come through Congress. He said, I'm gonna let Marlow run here because I wanna talk about how men have a God-given direction to start a family. Isn't that the truth? Isn't that a wonderful message? But what's interesting and apropos today, because I'm starting off the Israel section of the day, and I'll be back for the media section as well, so hopefully all of you are here all night. My last chat with him was actually supposed to be on Zoom the night before he died. Charlie and I were in a group chat. It's not very big, maybe 10 or so people. People that Charlie trusts specifically on the topic of Israel. And you're gonna get a kick out of what the group chat is called. It's called Saving Civilization. So a little grandiose, right? And when Charlie started it and he included me in it, I was thinking, that's funny. But knowing Charlie, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't a joke at all. Maybe it was him being literal. And it was an honor to be included in it, but the night before he was murdered, we were on the chat on this Zoom call. I unfortunately was not on it because I was at swim team, trying to be a good dad, which is ironic, given the previous conversations. But I wish I'd been there at least to talk to my friend one last time. But what was interesting is that the subject of what would have been my last call with Charlie was actually to prepare for hostile questions about Israel on campus. And the way the call ended, according to one of my friends who's on the call, he said the final sentiment of the call was, these are the pillars to save Western civilization: Jews, Christians, America, and Israel. And he said Charlie immediately reacted with an affirmation. Exactly, that's what it is. So since his assassination, a lot of anti-Israel voices have claimed that he turned on Israel, but it's just not so. He's one of its staunchest defenders in my generation. I'm reading some quotes. I'm very pro-Israel. My whole life I have defended Israel. He said this recently. And no non-Jewish person my age has a longer or clearer record of support for Israel than I do. And let me just say this, the night before he died, he was preparing to defend the Jewish state in his final hours. This is why you saw rabbis weep for him when he died. But he did have this unenviable task of trying to unite factions of a movement, the MAGA movement, that's increasingly skeptical of Israel. So your mind probably goes to the obvious place. What's changed? Have things changed? Why do things feel more divided? Israel's a lone Jewish state on earth. It's got biblical roots. Middle East lone democracy. It's thriving industry, culture, whereas most of its neighbors have been overwhelmed by barbarism, Islamism, things we kind of all agree are not great. So the details of October 7th, these are not unfamiliar to you. Israel invaded, families burned alive, hostages taken. Maybe some of the original claims were exaggerated, but what's known for sure is certainly bad enough to merit a robust response. So things were bad enough that what Israel decided to do was actually take the war to completion. And I think this is one of the things that changed. When you see a state like Hamas that believes that Israel does not have a right to exist, then after the events of October 7th, it was clear to Israel that we cannot coexist next to this group of people. We can't do it anymore. So Netanyahu sees that, he's a fighter, but what he's doing that's different is that he's trying to fight the war to completion. I say this, I judge it positively, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to clarify what's going on. He's fighting a war to victory, and we're not used to this. That's one thing that's changed. We're in the late stage of a war. We're accustomed to fighting wars to ceasefires. That's how Western countries have done it since Hiroshima. For some reason, we're uncomfortable seeing a war to victory. Maybe victory feels worse in some way. I don't know, I've never witnessed one. I'm just about to turn 40, so I've never seen us win one. So, but after October 7th, after the invasions, after the kidnapping, Israel says, no, we're not gonna live next to Hamas anymore, we're going to defeat them. Hamas wants Muslim control over everything, and that includes Israel. So how do you even have a ceasefire with such a group? So the world does hate watching this, though. And that's why Netanyahu has become aware of this. He said this recently: I don't want stories that we have been beaten by our enemies for us to be eulogized well in the global media. I agree completely. Even Trump himself hates this. I wrote extensively about Joe Biden. It was part of my research. The proverbial "I did the research so you don't have to" sort of situation. Spending a year and a half reading about Joe Biden. But that October 7th, I put squarely on Joe Biden's feet. I do. It was his weakness towards Israel, the worst ally possible. And he staffed his administration with Hamas sympathizers. After Hamas attacked Israel, the United States Office for Palestinian Affairs under Biden called for Israelis to refrain from violence and retaliatory attacks. That was the Biden administration's response. Not to mention he abandoned those weapons in Afghanistan that could have easily ended up in the hands of Hamas. So Trump doesn't want anything to do with this. This is a mess that Biden made. He doesn't want to spend time cleaning it up. And it's brutal. And we're not accustomed to seeing all this play out on the internet in the graphic detail the way we are. So with the best point I can make here is that while Israel's on the front lines against Sharia supremacy, which is coming, you can see it throughout Europe. You guys saw this week that now in Dearborn, which is in America, by the way, contrary to what some people might think, they're trying to name a street after a terrorist supporting newspaper publisher in the United States. This would be a five-alarm fire 20 years ago in this country. But for now, it's just one line in a newspaper or on a website like mine. Charlie was aware of the Islamist threat. He had this tweet, I'm going to read it to you. It was viewed 67 million times on X. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. 67 million. So, what are the best arguments against it? In Islamic supremacist regimes, women are oppressed, gays are executed, sexual violence is the norm, freedom is non-existent for most and very limited for everyone else. And we know what Charlie thought about freedom. What's more, Hamas is playing games with food aid. They're starving hostages and even some of their own people. Why are they doing this? Because it creates a global PR crisis for Israel. And it's effective. Given the media, given the global media, Hamas using their own people as human shields, storing weapons in schools, storing weapons in hospitals, effectively creating a genocide against their own people is asymmetric warfare because of the global press, because of the nature of energy online. They understand that all of it somehow creates pressure on Israel. It's Israel that drops food and leaflets to warn Palestinians when bombs are coming. It's Israel that posts evacuation maps. No one fights wars like this. They actually feed their enemies. They warn civilians of attacks, and they will even treat terrorists in hospitals. You contrast that with October 7th, and it's pretty clear which one's on the morally righteous side. But for me, a top argument as a Christian for why I support Israel and why I want Israel to win this war comes in the form of a question. I'll ask it to all of you, get your reaction. Who would you prefer have control of the Holy Land? The Islamists or Israel?